That's for another show. I wanted to show that one because it's in high def and it's a really good video. The one I show in the program, which I will show, is the real video of the real launch, and so it's not, they didn't have it in high def at the time. So, okay, my next one, just to kind of work our way towards starting, is going to be on the Apollo 11 moon landing. So we're going to take you back to 1960, so you have to come prepared to travel. I will have you back by lunch, maybe. It's in here, 10:30. So we're going to take you back in time. So who was in the 60s? Anybody here from the 60s? Okay. Is anybody here not from the 60s? I was like 8, so I think I showed myself in this. In the Apollo one, I showed a picture of myself. It's probably not me. Could be. Alrighty, well, my little TikTok down here says I'm behind by 2 minutes. I got a lot of material to give you. I'm going to try not to talk too fast and get it through. I have a story. I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to try and line up a bunch of stories to have a bigger story. I'm going to try and treat this with the respect that it deserves. We did lose seven crew, actually 9 people were involved in this that perished during the during recovery. So I'm going to try and do the best I can to that. But you have to tell the story because nobody's telling it anymore, and it's been quite a while. So I'm going to also tell you what happened. You know, where NASA made mistakes, where they should have done better. I won't tell the Challenger story anymore because it starts bad, in the middle it's bad, and at the end it's bad. And so I don't want to. I have to figure out how to handle that. But this one has a better ending. So we'll get into that. So who remembers where they were? Did anybody see it?
Yes.
Who said yes? This belongs to you. So who's a runner? Who have I got that can be a runner? We got anybody here that can run still? All right. Come on up here. Come get it. See, it pays to come on. Nice picture of the VAB with an Artemis on there. I don't know why I chose Artemis, but all right, so I'm going to start with where I was. So I live in small town Titusville. This is Titusville. Space program is here. This is the shuttle landing facility, so we can see it come in, but you got to be careful and picky about what you do. Here's Port Canaveral, so if you ever want to take a cruise out of there, you might have been there as well. So it's not hard for So that's what it sounds like. So you go about your day, you're working and everything. You know it's coming in general, but you don't know when. You hear the sound. And you start looking for the contrail. You follow it if you're good. Now the vehicle's way ahead of the sound because it's going much faster than the sound. That's actually breaking the sound barrier next time you get to you. So I was on the side of my house and somebody walked up and said, "I forgot that I didn't hear it." And somebody came up and said, "Columbia's gone." So so when they're on orbit, they have to decide where they're going to land. They do a deorbit burn. That tells where they're going, no doubt. It's the only place you can go. There's no engines on it. It comes in by burning off energy as it banks back and forth. And that's when it deorbits. It's coming down in Florida. It's coming down in California. And I had a friend who was out there waiting for it to come in. And he started going into work, and he saw the contrail. And on the front of the contrail, he didn't see this, but some people saw some things coming off of it. Weird. Doesn't happen usually. And so he says, "Oh, well, we're going home to Titusville. We're going back to Florida." So he gets in, and his boss says, "Yeah, we're going home." He said, "But they don't know where Columbia is." And he's like, that's not possible. It's in Florida. So he called a buddy of his on the runway, and they said, "Well, it didn't come in." And so they would haul him into a conference room. So there was a little town called Hintville, 1,000, 1,100 people. and they're going about their day kind of like I was. Sometimes you can hear it and see it, and sometimes you can't. Thousands of sonic booms. They heard boom, boom, boom. Large pieces dropping in lakes that were reported. They thought an explosion of some kind, train derailment, terrorist act, they had no clue. So I'll get back to that. Now there's also, at Kennedy Space Center, where it's going to come in, you've got the runway here. This is incidentally, that's how they take it on the orbiter on and back off the 747. There's a hangar over here I'll show you in a little bit. This is a bleacher area right here where the families sit, and they have an astronaut with them, and the NASA administrator was there, launch director, another couple people were there, and they're listening for that boom I just heard. And when you see that, you look and they didn't hear it. And so at the end of the runway, there's a clock, and this clock is counting down to when the orbiter is going to touch down. This is the only place it can be. It hits 0, starts counting up. And the crew's family look over, and the NASA administrator and Mike Reinbach, the launch director, walking towards it. Not good. All right, so this is a tragedy, obviously, and so the first question is, why do you want to tell a tragedy? So there's a few reasons behind that, and many of you heard about this, but it's in the news for a little while. What happened? You maybe heard something about foam or something like that, and didn't really hear the end of it. The next reason will tell you the end of it, and then the next reason is that we shouldn't forget. These things happen. We need to remember the crew, what they did, and they're pushing to advance space, so they knew it was risky. It was a very risky and complicated process. I mean, you just think about it. They burned all that 1.6 million pounds of fuel in that external tank. They burned it in less than 8 minutes. So if it was an Olympic-sized swimming pool, they would basically dump that in just a few minutes. That's how much fuel is coming out. So Dave Brown, one of the crew that I'll introduce later, he wrote a letter which they opened, and it said, if you find out what happened, go find the people that made the mistake and talk to them. It's okay. So the other reason is we just need to understand what happened. From an engineering approach, we're kind of weird, we want to understand what happened. So sometimes we forget about what it cost, but we want to understand. So at some point in here, we're going to move this past being a tragedy, and we're going to turn it into something more realistic, because it was a huge recovery effort. A guy named Mike Landbach wrote a book called Bringing Columbia Home. So it's a story about commitment and dedication, about people who don't know each other. They're inviting people into their home to stay, religion, all that stuff's out the window. How can we help? And it's about the best of all of us. And yes, it is a story about how to overcome pain and difficulty. So let's try and make some sense out of what happened. It seems like a good thing to do. So we'll start out by introducing the crew. You've got here, right here, you've got Dave Brown. He's the one that wrote that message. This guy's a doctor. They're all Air Force pilots, except for Kate Kachala. She's just got an measly PhD in engineering and already flown once. So we've got Dave Brown, Rick Husband, he's the commander. His second mission, odd that they put somebody in command on only their second mission. Laura Clark, she's an MD as well in the Navy. She's a, what do you call it, flight doctor, flight surgeon. Kate Kapala, a PhD in engineering. Michael Anderson, he's one of the mission specialists. He's also and then Willie McCool, this is his first time as pilot. So, and then Ian Raymond, he's the first Israeli astronaut. He is also in the Armed Service. But there's one other crew. Does anybody know who that is? So Columbia is the 8th member of the crew. She's the most experienced one. She's the first one you saw with the white paint on the tank, first one to fly. She's a development orbiter. And she has some interesting characteristics because she was the first. She's about 8,000 pounds heavier than the other ones, because they put a lot of extra instrumentation and stuff on there to figure out how to build the other ones lighter. So the other ones benefited from her, so she's definitely the mother of the family. She's been on 28 missions. She was the first one with John Young and Crippen to go up. Young was an astronaut, veteran of Apollo 10 and 16, which I'll tell you if you come back to one of my other talks. Anyway, so she's also went up to Hubble, and there's a payload called the Space Lab, which I'll show you in a little bit, and she was really good at doing that, carrying those. But since she was a little on the chubby side, one too many times to the buffet, I can relate to that. She didn't get to fly the higher missions, some of the higher missions, but she did fly some of the longest missions. She has something called an extended duration module in there that pushes it out to 16 days. It's basically more oxygen and more hydrogen to make electricity, and they get air and water from that as a byproduct. Now there's something also in there called an OEX recorder. Now all the data comes down from the orbiter, so they don't need a black box, but because it's a development orbiter, they've got an extra recorder in there that records additional data, so they're really interested in that. And so the teams that work with this are very particular. Some of them didn't like it because she was made differently, cabled differently, and they didn't like that. Others were like, they really liked her. And so when you looked at her, she's a pristine piece of artwork, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a second. So all these little dots you see here have been tile that's been replaced. So occasionally they call something called foam shedding. A little piece of tile will come off, and it'll hit, foam will hit for the tank, will hit it, and they'll have to replace the tile. Or they run into a B at 4,000 miles an hour or something like that. There's different reasons why they replace it. A little burnt around the crew hatch. This is where the crew goes in. This is her being transferred from the orbital processing facilities of the VAV to be stacked. The guys that pick it up would say we get to fly it first, the crane guys. So it doesn't go anywhere until we fly it. That's what they say. So this is what I mean by pristine. This is one of the hydraulics here, and this is how it looks all throughout the whole system. When they went to retire it, I'm going to chase a rabbit here, so I'm going to run out of time, that's all right. When they went to retire it, they wanted to do an analysis on a piece of cable, and they had a work order to go in there and cut a piece of cable out of it, and the guy that works it, they had to ask him, and he's like, "You're not doing that. I'm not letting you cut that out." And the guy says, "I'm going to cut it out, I got a work order." He pulls out some pliers to cut this piece of cable out that looks like this. And he's like, "Well, if somebody's going to do it, it's going to be me." So that was tough. That meant you were definitely at the end of the program and definitely not flying. All right, so there's a whole bunch of other people involved, you might guess. And so all these people are, and this is Firing Room 4. I actually work with these people here. It's Greg Gaddis, Jeremy Ernst, Steve Payne. So I work with these guys. They're the test directors. They're directing all the testing. They're checking out every little part of the vehicle, make sure it's all in good shape, ready to fight. They are spooky smart people. I mean, if you see them, they're the kind of guys you might walk away from in Walmart, like and not talk to him. But they are very much attention to detail. And this is at Kennedy Space Center, so we do it on the ground and launch. And then you got a whole other team at JSC that does the same thing out there, just as spooky smart on orbit. Did my space station person show up? Okay, well, now I can tell stories about space station. So this is where they manage the launch, when they're on orbit and landing. So this is where the landing was being managed out of. All right, so let's go ahead and introduce the crew.
And which will take them to the pad. This is a crew coming out of their crew quarters as a unit on the third floor of the operations and checkout building. All of our astronauts, of course, are now suited, and they are getting onto the elevator that will take them down to the ground floor and to the astronaut van, which is waiting for them. And our astronauts coming out now as they are making their way to the astronaut van. Commander Rick Husband, Payload Specialist Elon Ramon, Pilot William McCool, and Mission Specialist Michael Anderson, David Brown, Laurel Clark, and Colt Machado.
So this is them coming out. Now this is fun if you work there, which I worked in the ONC. You just have to go down there and you watch them come out. And they're getting in their Astro van. Did anybody pick that up? It's Airstream is what it is. They put stickers on the door. There's some kind of tradition about touching that. I don't think Kate Picciolo was quite calm enough to do that. So she's a little on the short side. So these are just very cool to watch that. So that was fun to do. Here's them, now they go out to the pad, skinny old elevator, can only take them up 2 at a time. So this is Michael Anderson, Dave Brown. Here's the entrance, the crew hatchway, which I showed you earlier, and they're packing them in there. There's no video of that? Oh, well. So they bring them up 2 at a time and stick them in there. So now I wanted to say that if this was a space hab mission, I'll give you that in a minute. So this is getting ready for the launch. Only one thing came up in the launch to worry about. They had somebody was flying inside the no-fly zone, and that really annoyed launch director, Mike Leinbach, and so they called the local Air Force base, and F-15 started flying over looking for him. And he actually had a phone number that he could call that if he had to shoot down a plane, that he could get permission to do that, because this was not that far after 9/11. But it turned out to be some Mylar party balloons, which they promptly caught and put in balloon jail. So Scotty, we're going to need some volume, so this is another launch.
Area go for auto sequence start. Columbia's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 15 seconds. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experience.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
Columbia now rolling on to the proper azimuth for a 39-degree inclination to orbit. Shuttle in a heads-down, wings level position for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 30 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines beginning to throttle back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Columbia already 2.5 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 4.5 miles in altitude. The main engines beginning to rev up to full throttle, 104% of rated performance. Joined on the flight deck by pilot Willie McCool, flight engineer Colton Chaplin, mission specialist Dave Brown, mission specialist Laurel Clark, payload commander Mike Anderson, and payload specialist Elon Ramon seated down on the middeck. 1 minute, 26 seconds into the flight, Columbia 10 miles downrange, 13 miles in altitude, traveling at 1,800 miles an hour.
So I'd love to show you the whole thing, but we would not get anywhere. I played as much as I did because when you heard your go for throttle up, that's when they lost Challenger. So it's nice to always, when you play one, to get past that point. Okay, so I would give out a picture for this, but it's just too easy. 2 different teams, they're running 24 hours a day. What are the names of the teams? Red, blue, okay, we're very creative. So they worked on something called Space Hab, which was a private company who made a module that goes in the back of the orbiter for them to do experiments out of. I worked on something called the Space Lab, which I'll show you a picture in a second, and then there was Sky Lab, so we're pretty creative with our titles and names in this business. With 2 crews, 24 hours a day. Let's see, here's if you look at the back of the orbiter, that's what you'd see, Space Hab. And this is kind of what it looks like on the inside. So there's a crew deck, a mid deck, and then there's a lower deck, but that's an avionics bay. So there's 3 decks. So they live and work and everything in the mid deck, and then the flight deck's on top, and then that's Space Hab, and they got a tunnel that can go back and forth. And if for some reason they need to go outside, they have to depressurize everything about that. So here's inside Space Hab. That's Ian Raymond. And here's from the flight deck looking out at night. Well, night comes every 45 minutes. And so this is looking out the back. So these windows you see up here is what the picture of the Space Hab was taken from, and you can look out the top if you're running a manipulator arm. And there's actually windows on the side over here that you can look out. I can. So this is what I worked on, Space Lab. It's a little bigger. So I've been out there in the middle of the night and been one of these guys in the little spooky suits. They woke me up because there was something wrong, and they thought I could fix it. And this is them inside, so I had to throw that in there. So the first thing they do when after they launch is they start reviewing footage. First day, nothing obvious jumped out at them. And then the second and third day, the engineers started coming unglued because they saw this hit. So this scared them. The biggest thing they'd ever seen before is something around 4 or 5 inches in diameter. This is the size of a piece of carry-on suitcase. And it is a glancing blow off the bottom. You can see it come all to pieces, and so this is what their history has told them, that we'll be okay with that. The one that was a 5-inch piece did do some damage, but they're not too worried about it. But that's not the engineers. The engineers are like, I want some video, I need some data, I want to find out what happened. And so they're squirming around trying to find data, not getting a lot of help with that from management. But at this point, it's about carry-on suitcase size, about a little over 2 pounds, and it has built up a delta velocity. Going down the road in your car, you stick your hand out at 60 miles an hour. So that wind at your hands, that's 1,100 miles an hour, 1,600 miles an hour wind. And it is thinner, but it's built up a delta velocity of 500 miles an hour. And it was a glancing blow. Everybody believes that, but it did hit the left wing. They've got a term for it, foam shedding, and they don't know this, but it has punched a basketball-sized hole in the front leading edge of the wing, and there's nothing they can do about it. So their fate is sealed from right here. This is it. They're gone. But nobody knows that. I'll re-emphasize that. Here's another view, and you can see it's just not clear if it did any real damage. But the engineers are trying to find other ways of getting video. They're calling the Air Force. And so, hey, why not look out the window and look down here? You really can't see underneath the wing. The payload bay doors have to be open because that's how it keeps cool. If those don't open, they got to come home. So you can try and look out the window, but it ain't working. And they weren't asked to because they did not think it was a problem. So this is an email that went up from the launch team on the ground to Rick Husband saying, hey, you're going to be interviewed by some press, you're going to get some questions about a foam impact. We've looked at it, it's not a concern, you don't need to worry about it, it's no big deal. Not a lot of investigation going on or wanting to happen from that point on. So this is a bit tough to take from an engineering standpoint because we want to know, we want data, we want to know what's going on. So they've been up for 16 days, good mission, they've been doing work, 24 hours a day working hard. And they're getting ready to come home, and so this is where they're all seated. This is the flight deck, they put the chairs back in, they take them down. This is the mid deck where they all, that's the tunnel going back, and this is where they sit. So you've got Willie McCool here, he's the pilot, Husband here, Dave Brown here, and Craig Kachala here. And then on the mid deck down here, you've got Ian, Michael Anderson, and Laura Clark. Now they can listen on the radio, but they don't have any windows or anything, they can't really see what's going on, so they're just kind of along for the ride, but they can hear. And so turns out that there's a video camera being passed around, and this is the video from that. There's a lot more to this video, but there's not anything after this, so it stops. So it stops about 5 minutes before anything happens. Oh, some things to look at. You can look at the windows and you can see the plasma jumping off. If you listen closely, you can hear them talk about pressurizing, checking their suits, and you can hear one of them say, you wouldn't want to be outside right now. Let's go back and find it here. Take control. These are the windows. Over 2,000 degree there. So what happened was they're passing this camera around, and we didn't really know what happened to the video, but then during the recovery they find a locker with some tapes in it, and this was the last tape in there. Now, if they reloaded the camera and they put another tape in there and they continue to film, we don't know. I don't have any knowledge of anybody finding an extra camera, and if they did, they probably wouldn't tell anybody about it. So the last words that they heard from him was that the ground asked Rick Husband a question, and he said, "Roger," and he was cut off, and he said, "It's Roger." And then they lost data. Now that's not uncommon for coming back in because all that plasma is messing up their communications. So this is the launch director, Leroy McCain. He's at JSC, he's managing the return.
Columbia, Houston, UHF, com check.
DC flight. Flight DC, lock the doors.
So this is a picture of him the minute that he's realized that they've lost the crew. So somebody, you know, they're still trying to be optimistic, waiting for it to come out of the comm outage. They're calling, and one of the other astronauts that was there for the launch was watching outside lifetime video and saw it come apart on video and came up and told him that it's gone. And so this is his reaction. Now, when he orders lock the doors, on the EOD world where I worked, unmanned program, if we had an accident, the launch director would tell him to lock the doors, so you don't lose any data like that. And people quit making phone calls, nothing shows up, very controlled, but you gotta sit there on console, and I've watched a vehicle come apart, and there's nothing you can do about it, you just watch. You're like, I know it's coming apart, an expendable vehicle, one that meant no man. So that's why the orders lock the door. So this video is a little tough to take for me. This is Wayne Hale, and so I'll just play it and we'll talk about it afterwards.
On his blog, former shuttle project manager Wayne Hale revealed that John Harpold, director of mission operations, told him there's nothing we can do about damage to the thermal protective system. If it has been damaged, it's probably better not to know. That being said, there was at least one NASA engineering manager, Don L. McCormick Jr., who told mission management team member Linda Ham that he had concerns about the issue. Despite this, he was told by her that it was no issue for this mission.
So that's a little tough to take. And so I have watched this many times, way too many times. Some of this is hard to watch, I don't know if you know that, but some of this is too hard to read. So anyway, I watched it many times and I've gone back and forth about what I think. So I kind of boiled it down to a couple of things. You know, if you're an engineer, you want to know. You want data. You want to know what's happening, and you want to know what the results of that are. So that's the first thing. You want to find out the data. If you're management, you're sitting back saying, "Somebody please tell me everything's going to be okay. The vehicle's flying." Now, most of these managers are engineers, but the problem in this case is that you can't make the management call unless you've made the engineering call. You don't have the data to. That was what was happening. The engineering team had clearance. They called the Air Force and said, "Give us a video from one of your spooky assets," and that was in work, and management cut it off. That's hard to swallow. So my question that I kept going through is, what would I do if I was in this situation? And so I really don't want to put you all on the spot, but you know what the two outcomes are. They've been up there 16 days. It only runs, they might push it to 20 days if they put them to sleep, but that's inevitable that way. And the other way is too. So would you want to know? I mean, you could raise your hand or not. Would you want to know, or would you want to just go quickly? I don't know the answer to that. That's a tough question, tough dilemma. So we have a person here from Space Station. I was talking to them the other day, and they said, since this, they have gone back and made procedures and guidelines. They sat down with the crews and said, if you're on Space Station and we've got to deliver you some bad news, what's the deal? How do you want to hear it? And so they've already ironed that out. They've asked them that question and said, you know, do you want to know? And so they figured that out. So I don't have to make that call now. They figured that out. I'm an engineer and I can't make that call. So, all right, so let's just run over quickly where we're at. It's a 16-day mission. It's a 16-day mission. They're on their way home. They don't really have a choice. The orbiter was lost during re-entry over Texas, and it was a foam strike that hit the leading wind. It turns out it's like 1,000-to-1 shot where it hit. Nobody expected that. I didn't think that. It's called foam shedding. Never a piece this big. Their models didn't even work. 2,000-degree plus air plasma was entering that hole and melting the aluminum structure of the wing, and it finally said uncle and came off very quickly, and then it went into a spin. The crew may or may not have had their suits on, as we saw, and their visors down. They probably did not have time to close their visors. It happened so quickly. I have some videos that suggest it's seconds and some that says it's minutes, so I don't know. But the lack of oxygen and the G-forces would have made it very quick, just to let you know. All right, so there's an engineering quad view that I've seen that has the engineers on console, the data that they're looking at, the actual video outside and the animation, really hard to look at because the engineers are pretty stressed. They're seeing sensors going off in the wing. Everybody's asking this stuff, why are these sensors going bad? And they're not related. They're trying to figure that out. The landing gear, air pressure goes out. The landing gear says it's down. It's not down. They know that. And when they do a reconstruction, here's kind of what's going on. This plasma's coming in here and burning up everything inside the wing. And they don't know this. They can't add it up. But people are starting to the engineers are starting to put the pieces together. Eventually what happens is one of these tile at the top of the wing breaks, and that plasma now has a nice clean path to go through and it just saws the wing off. So this is what they're looking like over Hempville. These are every one of these pieces as it drops through the sound barrier, it makes a sonic boom. So this is coming down in their backyards, and lakes, and schoolyards. So there was a Apache helicopter out there coming back from maneuvers, and they have some pretty good optics on there for doing what they do. And this is what they see. These are the three main engines, and this is the crew module. The crew is in there.
Altitude slow. Altitude slow.
The engines are made out of titanium. I don't know if the Apache helicopter knew what he was viewing or not. There's no more crew cabin. So this is what's going on in Hempville. They're hearing all that stuff running down. So, are we stressed enough? I am. So let's try and move this past the tragedy and get on to the recovery effort, which is incredible. So these are guys, so instantly, hundreds of people started flowing into these small towns where the debris was imported. And their first take are people from Kennedy Space Center, and they're engineers, technicians. They're not, well, some of them are Wismans, but they don't have the right clothes. There's thorns, there's barbed wire fences, there's water, mud. It's just, it's really pretty miserable. They're working 12, 13 hours a day. They don't have places to sleep. All this stuff, a lot of stress. You don't know what you're going to find. Just a lot of stress going on. And so they're dealing with it the best they can. One of their three goals are first, make sure everyone's safe. This is in people's backyards. There's fuels and they're called hypergalls. They're nasty stuff. You can't breathe them. And people are just walking up, picking up the debris and walking away with it, which is we'll get back to. But this is the OEX report, and yes, it is a black box. My bad. But that's got the data in it. That's going to actually tell them which panel got struck on the wing. They'll know exactly which panel. And these are the tapes that they took out of here and put them in another one, cleaned them and put them in. This is where they found one of the crew members. The owner of the land cut a path back into the woods so that the family could go visit it. Now, this isn't this person, but when they found one of the crew, somebody called and said, I got something in my backyard or in my lot. And the police came and they're like, oh, okay, we know what this is. And they got a sheet and put it over it. And he had to stand there for hours, basically next to it till NASA got their act together to get there and pick them up. So a lot of stories like that. I can't tell them all because I can't get through them. A lot of interagency squabbling as to who was going to do what. I think the president finally said, look, KSC, you do the recovery effort and the reconstruction, and the FBI will handle with the remains and treat that as a case. But you can see the kind of environment that they're going through. Pretty messy. They would walk in lines, to kind of make sure they don't check anything. One time they ran across something and all the engineers ran over there and they says, "Y'all leave that alone, you're not rocket scientists." And it's like, yeah, actually we are rocket scientists. So people started donating things, and somebody made a cake and like no one would touch it. No one's gonna take the first bite out of that cake. I don't think it ever got, it's probably still there someplace today. There was a lady that wanted to take, I'm gonna try to hit a couple of stories here. There was a lady that wanted to take a picture of somebody. He's like, "Hey, I'm nobody." I think I actually didn't know the guy. "I'm nobody, don't take a picture of me." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm from Kennedy Space Center." And she just gave him a hug because he needed it. One lady came up with a plate of chicken. A plate of chicken. There's 1,000 people walking out every day. And so they took up an they took up a donation and they gave it to her to make sure she had food. There was one guy that was took his 2 weeks vacation, and I got to go back to work, but he was really valuable. And a senator called his boss and said, "Do you mind giving him another week off?" And people just called if they needed porta potties, if they needed something, they just call somebody and it would be delivered. No money, nothing. And there were a guy sleeping in the car. Family comes along and says, "No, you're coming to our house." And they, fed them, washed their laundry, gave them a place to sleep, cleaned their clothes, like I said, their boots, and got them back to work the next day. $620,000 is going to come up here in a minute that people donated to provide them with food. People were delivering cell phone network. One of the companies just brought in a whole cell phone network. I won't name the network. Chicken, truck, freezer full of chicken, all kinds of stuff that people were bringing. Now, they were still fumbling around a bit because these are just, engineers and stuff. So the Forestry Service, it wasn't fire season, they said, "Hey, we can have you 1,000 people here in 3 days." And these are Native Americans' toughest nails, and it wasn't fire season, so they'd be happy to get to work. And so when they came out, the game changed, because these guys are used to being out in that, and they can get through the thorns and thistles and stuff like that. And they brought everything they needed, their own cook places, their own everything. These are boots. I'm glad I don't think I have to clean them. So this is some of the search crew out, and they look like they're fumbling around a bit. Now these sticks are kind of important because one of the NASA guys got out there with his nice handy dandy machete and cut his finger off. And the rocket scientist cut his finger off, so they took all the sharp things away from the NASA scientists and gave them sticks, which I think was a wise choice. But they look like they're a little bit lost, but they all have GPS, so they're not really lost, but definitely looks like they're lost. Now this is the kind of thing you're thinking, this is somebody's house. One piece hit a carport and put a hole in the carport, but nobody got hit on the ground. But this stuff may have toxic fuels, and people are just kind of standing next to it, but it was just popping up everywhere in schoolyards. Some things showed up on eBay, and the FBI said, "Let's not make things worse. We're going to give you amnesty to bring it back, so bring it back, no big deal. Don't bring it back, it's a crime scene investigation, and you're going to get in trouble." So people were somebody brought something back from Challenger that they had. So this is the helicopter that they were using flying over. Now they were doing a couple of things. They were obviously looking for debris on the ground. Turns out they were looking for trees being cut off by things landing. They were also looking for birds that would circle in the air for certain things, and other animals looking for stuff. They had a fuel pump problem, and it crashed. This pilot, the co-pilot, were killed. These guys were injured very heavily, so they did lose 2 people in the process of this recovery. So this, one of the native Indians, who is a fire worker, he's used to looking up to see if there's stuff in the trees. Tree cut off. No big deal, broke tree. Puddle on the ground. Nothing there. 14 feet in the ground is this that they dug up. This is one of the engines. It's a pump head. There's 6 of them, they found 3. And this is what it looks brand new. Quite a difference. This is the nose cone, and these are the RCS structures. This is the reaction control system. That's how they push themselves around in orbit. And they use hyperballs. That is nasty stuff. This plate over here was underneath the belly. One of the engineers found this in the woods and thought, I put this on. It came off. I killed him. And the other guy said, no. If it had come off, it would have come off like in California in one of his first pieces. You didn't do it. But everybody had that attitude. The people that sewed the fabrics were thinking, maybe I did. Everybody was thinking maybe they did it. So here's what the nose cone looks like. We found it. That's carbon fiber. Very tough. Same stuff that was in the leading edge of the wing. These are the thrusters. So this is the landing gear, and this is what it looks like new. And I have a friend of mine, Debbie Tonovo, who went out there for the first time, and she walked in and she saw a landing gear like this, and she's used to seeing that shiny picture I showed you earlier, and she went behind a car and threw up for about an hour and cried and came back. But she did redeem herself, because later somebody called and said, hey, there's some kind of battery or something out in our field, and she went there, and it turns out there was a bull out there that was paying special attention to this mousy of a lady that's only like 4'5" or something like that. And she had a stern talking to with the cow. I think something about steaks came up, and the bull decided to leave her alone, and I think the bull made a good choice, because I've been in meetings with her before. She's a great lady. So this is the mid-deck, and this is the tunnel, the hatch that they go through to get to Space Hab. And this is what it looks like when they found it. Now, it's obviously cleaned up. There's supposed to be 2 pictures of that. Oh, well, you only get one, sorry. Next movie. So, pieces of the wing. So this is the hatch, the crew hatch, where they go in. People had to put this together. What the heck is this? What is this? So this is a helmet and a patch. There's one where there's nothing inside, just the rim, a shoe. There's a whole story about this watch, and I don't think I can get through the story. So just note that it's stopped at 9:06. The accident happened at 8:59. So 6 minutes, and the watch stopped for some reason. No wristband, by the way. And Dave Brown was taking it up for his girlfriend. So every blue dot you see on here is where they found a piece of the orbiter. Over 80,000 pieces. The FAA thought they would only recover 10%. They found 38%. About 80,000 pounds of material over this entire area. And each one of these, somebody would have to go out and find out. One was, guy drives all the way out there, and it's like a piece of a toaster or something. It's like, no, we don't want a piece of a toaster. But they had to check it out. So when the orbiter came apart, the heavy things push through the atmosphere and go quickly to the ground. The light things get stopped and they float down. So when they started looking at, hey, this stuff came out of paper, patches, this came out of the crew cabin, they found it was all in a specific area, so they started looking for the crew there, and that's when they basically recovered all the crew. So this is back at Kennedy Space Center. They drew the orbiter out on the floor and started putting pieces in line as to what went where. They'd get all excited that they found out where a piece would, and then they'd find the earbuds from the crew and remember what they were actually doing. So this is the right wing. This is Mike Leinbach showing where the hole in the left wing was. There's not much. They didn't find much of it. This is the Atlantis that I showed you earlier. These are the windows, and this is what they look like afterwards. My daughter went out there when they opened to the public and asked me, and more than one person did this. Were they behind those windows? And the answer was Rick Husband was over here, Willie McCool was right here. So here's the specifics. This is a piece of foam. It covers up where the orbiter ties to the vehicle, right here. And they changed the bonding method, good or bad, they did, and it came off. And it actually broke into a couple of pieces, so it was 3 pieces that hit, but one piece was substantial. This right here is at the front leading edge of the wing. They actually went over to Atlantis and Discovery and took them off because they wanted something that would resemble exactly what it was. This was one that shot. It's a glancing blow, and this is the next shot. So up until that point, everybody was questioning that it was a fault. Nobody thought it was a fault.
In RCC panel 8L, confirming findings of other investigation.
So everybody wanted to believe it. The FBI thought it was terrorism, and so the launch director, they had people embedded with the people doing the search to kind of sniff anybody out who might be, a bad player. And the launch director said, I want the FBI here in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. They went to the hangar and said, sniffed for any kind of explosives. They found none. He said, that's the end of that. You're out of my team. Get out of there. Let my guys work and quit this conspiracy stuff. Okay, so let's get on to rescue operations. What could be done? So the first thing is, could they make it to the space station and safe haven in the space station? The answer is wrong orbit. And to change orbit was a lot. They had like 1/6 of the fuel required to even get close. You can't do it with a fire extinguisher. Who watched the one with Gravity or whatever with Sharon, Susan, what's her name? Sandra Bullock taking a fire extinguisher? So could they some way fix the wing? Could they get out there? It's underneath. There's no handholds. There's no way to even get down there and even look at it. But maybe we could put some bags of water in there. They'll freeze. They looked at this up and down. In fact, the guys that were doing the imagery report, since they couldn't get the imagery, were already doing what ifs of, hey, if there is a hole, what would we do? And so they looked at something that, can we get rid of the space hat? Get rid of some weight? Don't have as much heat? No way to do that either. How about to fly a different re-entry? Have a different profile because it heats. They looked at that. That wasn't working. So the only one that was possible maybe was that they put up another Atlantis. They did calculate it was possible if they cut a bunch of corners and basically ignored a lot of stuff that was safety related, and they had a 2-day margin. It would have had to be decided almost from day one that they were going to do it. It didn't happen, wasn't going to happen. That wasn't a real option. Could something have happened? I'm an engineer, never say no. So, all right, so that's the piece of foam. So basically, to wrap it up here, that's what did it. The bonding had a problem. Sprawling concrete pops, water gets behind it. Maybe some moisture got behind the tank, froze it, kind of pushed it out a little bit. They started leaving it off on the next missions. They're like, we're just not going to put anything there. Did they suspect anything? There was one switch panel where Willie McCool was moving some switches to see if they were, he could restart the APUs, so there's some stuff going. There was a slight yaw to it because of it. They didn't pick up on that, so the odds of them really knowing something was wrong for very long were very slim. They were, when the first torque cap, it actually cracked the crew cabin and breached it, and so it went instantly to a vacuum. And so if they were not in their spaces, that would be just one breath out, and that would have been it. And very high G maneuvers. So it's important to note that everyone who worked this did it with great pride. You saw the one picture of that, everything was done. Nobody cut corners, and this situation was a bad day. Yes, there were some design issues, some arrogance in NASA, which was corrected. Some people were moved around. So we're just trying to keep the push to understand what's going on, and this was very difficult for everybody, but there were no bad players per se. They didn't launch when they shouldn't have. So none of that going on. So everybody was, and it hit everyone deeply. I mean, even me, I don't know if you can tell, it hits me deeply too. So there now, there's a monument in Arlington, and it's next to Challenger. Some of the crew are buried here. Most all of them had private funerals. Some are buried at private cemeteries. This is where the 8th member is, Columbia. This is Mike Chinelli. So it's all in this room here on the 16th floor of the VAB. I've been in there. You can go in there, and there are parts out that you can see. It's very interesting. If you ever get a chance to do that, do it. Go. So plus you get to go in the VAB. All right. So first thing I want to ask is, does anybody have a birthday on February the 1st? Okay, one of these pictures up here belongs to you. Who's closest to February 1st? What's your birthday? The 5th? Oh, tell me which one's closer. I think January 30th is closer. So who wins the other one? February 2nd. I'm going to give it to February 2nd. So these are up here for you. We've got a nice picture of the shuttle and one of the space station. So they're for you. Now, I have like 5 minutes before they throw me out. So these are up here. I'm going to answer some questions. Where's my runner guy? Where's my runner? So questions get stickers. This is not it's a pay for play thing around here. I have to pay if you want to play. All right. So What's your question?
How do you feel about,
Oh, don't get political on me. Okay, SpaceX, I'm going to tell you from an engineering technical viewpoint, it's phenomenal. I mean, he caught to something the size of a football field with 2 big chopsticks. He's landing vehicles. So yeah, you can pass those out too. So yes, SpaceX is going nuts. Basically, he reflies some of the vehicles up to 20 times some of them have flown. It's the equivalent of flying a 747. Whereas the Artemis program, that's getting political, never mind. Next question.
Was the crew capable of an EVA, and if so, could you not have some kind of patch kit or something?
So on the next, when they returned to flight, so you're going to give that to him. On the next return to flight, they went to space station and they practiced a repair. But at this time, it wasn't really possible. They had no materials to do repair. You've got a hole in the leading edge, the hottest point that we'll see on that front edge. They could have done an EVA. They would have actually had to shut down everything and depressurize for 2 days to do that. They did not believe they had a problem. That's the real problem. You've already had a question. Oh, extra vehicle activity. So go outside. Thank you. That's a good point. So you can stick with that. What's your sticker question?
From the Beijing point of view, is it safer to fly in space today?
Oh yes.
Than it was
Yes. So this vehicle had an inherent problem. You've got, have you ever seen Saturn V launch? Come tomorrow. There's ice falling off the side. Well, to keep that from happening and hitting the orbiter, they put insulation on there to keep that ice from building up. And it does work, but now they got a foam shedding problem. So the newer programs, Artemis is putting them back on top, Elon Musk is putting them back on top, and the added benefit there is if there's a problem, they can get away. So there's really no way for them to get away with the orbiter. Did I answer your question? I'm going to take one from the other side. That gentleman over there, you can start heading his way. Loud.
Yeah, I seem to remember at the time that the media did pick up on that foam hitting the leading edge, and it was a concern at reentry. Was the media being fair in their coverage?
So I'm going to tell you that there was some arrogance. The arrogance goes along with, hey, we've seen it before. We're used to this. It happens. Not a big deal. We can deal with it. Not a problem. There was a foam impact. They did not know how bad it was. They knew they had an impact, and they knew it would be an issue for the next flight. Incidentally, when they returned to flight, the launch, they hit a bird right off the pad. It's like, oh my goodness, talk about bad luck. I don't think they were being unfair to the media, when this all finished, they said, give everybody all the information. Don't hold anything back. And so Wayne Hale said, give them everything. We talked to him, he said, give them good and bad, and let's just do it.
How long you got the next launch?
So they're supposed to, the one you want to see is the heavies.
Now after this one, how long?
I'm not sure. Usually it's about 2 years for them to get everything, because they also use that opportunity to fix a few other things that they needed to fix. So I don't catch the full time on one more next week. Then I'm going to jump back here to this lady. Right there. You're the only one with your hand up. So I worked out there, and I didn't work on the shuttle program, but typically when there's a failure, and I've worked failures, you know the general cause of what happened within an hour at most. I mean, you know where to look. The exact cause of the failure and how much damage, that usually takes a lot longer. I'll show you a GPS-2R failure, but I won't show you, it's not in this presentation. We knew within minutes what happened. So this lady back here has had her hand up quite a bit. So, and then I'm going to, one more, I'm going to cut it off. So I don't know, I asked that question. So what was the option? There's no other option. There was no option that could bring them home safely. So there was a possibility if they decided from day one that they could have got the other orbiter up there on orbit. In the future, they always launch with one ready to go. but there was no option. They had no safe option for bringing her back.
Not on day one.
Otherwise, they'd take it. You're the last one, and then I gotta get out of Dodge.
The shuttle program scheduled to end by this point, or is this?
This was the beginning of the end. So they had to finish out Space Station, and then when they finished out Space Station, they decided they would go ahead and fly the last one mission they had already queued up and take it to Hubble and do one last Hubble repair, which is my last talk on Hubble. You want to see that one too. So this is, I appreciate you coming. The next one is tomorrow, 10:30 if you wake up. Thank you for coming.